how to invest in stocks in Malaysian share market, sector by sector breakdown. In this video, I'm going to show you all the sector breakdown. Just go into my brokerage account. As you can see over here, go to here, whole market. So if your brokerage does not have this kind of feature, then very easy, it sucks. Change to a brokerage that shows you something like this, okay? This sector. So I'm going to do a quick review of how to invest in these sectors in the stock market. So for example, if you go to these sectors, mining, there's really not much of mining sector you can invest in. I don't know why you want to invest in mining sector. So just skip that. Plantation sector, that's something that we can see over here. Plantation, you have like 2 pages of stocks. Your oil palm, for the most part, are oil palm. Again, you have like FGV, like Felda and all that. But if you ask me whether I'm an expert in this sector, no. Like, I don't think anyone is really an expert in those oil palm or even plantation sector unless you work in that sector alone, which means that, to quote Warren Buffett, you have to invest within your circle of competency. If not, you will be doing a lot of work in this sector trying to understand it, plus the fact that oil palm is essentially a commodity. Now, again, the commodity prices, it fluctuates. You have to understand what's the supply and demand, whether the weather factors and all that. If you have certain weather condition coming, then it will affect all the harvest of these plantation companies. In return, it will affect their net profit, and then in return, it will affect their stock price. So you have to understand the whole process. If you are not an expert in this, I would say that you could probably just skip this plantation sector unless you have a good understanding of this. Now, how about properties? Now, property is actually no-brainer. Everyone can relate to properties because mostly you can see all these stocks are actually property developers. Now, it seems like very easy to know that property developer, whether they're doing well or not by their launching and all that. Then most of these properties are actually property developer for residential properties. When it comes to residential properties, and at the time of this recording, which 2018, you know that there's an oversupply in the market. There's a lot of overhang property that cannot be sold. They have to do a lot of promotion and all that. So property sector, it seems like easy because it's something that we encounter every day. But because of the oversupply issues, overhang issues, so this is just invest with caution because it's not as easy as a lot of people actually thinks. But if you like that, then just go ahead. But personally, there's other options when I want to invest in property, which I'm going to talk about more as this video progress. So for hotel, there's really not much, but Shangri-La and all that, so we just skip. We know finance. Now, finance is another sector that is good because finance is actually what we call a bellwether of the economy. What it means by that, normally finance sector is if there's any stock market crash, finance sector will be the first to be impacted. That is a sign. That's why it's called bellwether of any stock market of the economy. And after, let's say, a stock market crash, a recession, then it recovers back. Finance stocks is also one of the first sector. Studies have shown they are the first sector to recover. So they are like a yardstick, a bellwether of the entire economy, a stock market. Having said that, you also know that now the bank's margin are really being squeezed. That's why you see that over the years, there has been a lot of retrenchment because a lot of things when it comes to banking, there's a lot of compliance costs involved, which means that compliance costs cost a lot of money to implement, right? And all these are actually very regulated by the central bank. So the other thing is that interest rate has been all-time low. And when interest rate is low, banks earns the bulk of their money from their interest rates that you charge them when you borrow loans and all that. Squeeze the bank's margin. That's why a lot of banks nowadays, they are going for the what we call as a wealth management business side of thing, or business banking, because the loan, which used to be the lending side of things, used to be very profitable, but with the compression of interest rate, banks have to really cut costs here and there, reduce paperwork, or everything go online, reduce the staff and all that. And next one, we're not going to do SPV, special purpose acquisition vehicle. We are going to do infrastructure. Now, infrastructure, you have a lot of these electrical and all that. So generally, infrastructure, again, it is a good for cash flow due to the fact that the infrastructure, okay, just imagine, all the company like, like TNB, Tenaga, those are like infrastructure. I'm not sure why it's not listed here, but every infrastructure company like TNB, every month you actually paying them. So there's no doubt of where their money will be coming from, and there's no point to say that whether the business is doing good or not. Having said that, they're also a monopoly, meaning that if they feel that the increase in the tariff is justifiable, then maybe they will do so with government approval and things like that, of course. But having said that, the cash flow is also always almost guaranteed. The only thing that infrastructure company or stock have to look for, they have to really control their costs. Okay, but there's infrastructure, a lot of cost to maintain all those infrastructure related to support all the infrastructure. I'm not sure what I'm saying over here, but hope that makes sense. So with that, we have covered actually how to invest in plantation stocks, how to invest in property stock, how to invest in finance stock, how to invest in infrastructure stocks. Now, this is next is how to invest in technology sector or technology stocks. Now, when it comes to technology sector, a lot of people will jump right into it because they think technology is a very easily understandable. Who else? Raise your hand if you are not using some form of technology in today's age. Maybe your handphone, maybe your computer, maybe your laptop, maybe your iPad. So all those are technology sector. But when you invest in so-called technology sectors in those technology companies, it's not as easy, because for example, Inari is one example. They are not really like technology as technology. They also, you have to understand, Inari, they are doing a lot of testing, okay, manufacturing for all the parts and whatnot, equipment to test. For example, they are supplier for Apple, which supplies all the parts to make your iPhone. Now, it might seem simple to say that as long as mobile phone and mobile device are growing, they may have this supply and demand, but just bear in mind that there's a lot more into it, because things like what is whether there's any raw material shortage that could impact the revenue. For example, if I go to company like Vitrox, they are vision inspection. So vision inspection for microchip and all that. I'm an engineer myself, so I know a bit of this. And this is something sector, if you are not working in those sector, it's really hard to say that what is the supply and demand of these electronic parts or electronic sector. What is the cost, whether there's, China and all that, they are actually a big competitor or for this semiconductor industry. They really, things are really, like for example, computer is getting cheaper and they are getting more advanced, simply because the cost of all these things are actually going down. So there's a lot of competitive cost over there, and to an extent, when there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of supplies, your costs have to drive down. You cannot sell that as expensive as you were selling to your customer. And having said that, when it comes to cost control and it comes to supply and demand of this technology sector, there's a lot of factor that goes into it. It's not as easy as a lot of people think. So that is what I want to warn you about. You really have to be working in this industry, and your knees, maybe both your feet wet deep into this industry to understand the supply and demand curve, whether there's this tariff and all that geopolitical risks that might affect the supply and demand, or not only the technology sector, but the technology parts in this sector itself. So again, not easy, but let's move on to trading and service. Now, trading and service is something that you need to specify, because it's a huge scope by its own. Okay, huge scope. Now, what it means by that now, you see AirAsia, your favorite AirAsia flight company or AirAsia X, is still a trading and service business. Malaysian Airport, BJ Corporation that probably runs all the Axiata also, the Cellcom and BJ Food, all those, or Kenny Rogers, BJ Toto, this is all the gambling and all that. So Caring is a pharmaceutical company, farmer-run pharmacy. So it's a huge sector. You have to narrow down by what kind of business that you're focusing on. Is it aviation? Is it telco? Is this something like those non-Sharia compliant things, or whether it's a food and beverage? So these are all services, trading and services sector. So you have to focus. It's impossible to cover everything, and you can see that under services and trading and this sector, there's 10 pages of all these stocks that is listed under here. So it's a huge sector. You might want to narrow down by only investing in the sector that you are very familiar in. Depend on, let's say if you are talking about Nestle, okay, I'll just show you probably next. Okay, MyEG, it's not a technology stock, seems like it's like trading and services. Nestle supposedly also it is trading services, but no, Nestle is actually under what I call with consumer products. Well, services, trading and services sector, you have to really to narrow down what are the aspect, whether it's a pharmaceutical, whether it's a food and beverage and all that. Now, having said that, one of the best sector to invest in from a very high level is one of it is also consumer sector, because let's be frank, things in consumer sector, like we want to show you this, like Nestle, right? So regardless of any economic cycle, economic recession, you still have to, a lot of people still have to depend on, drink and eat all your cornflakes and your Milo, your meal powder and all that. So these are the most resilient sector when it comes to consumer products, and I highly suggest if you are a beginner, you might want to actually look at this sector. Carex, it's a company that does rubbers, condoms and all that, and people are not going to stop having sex even though the economic recession is coming down. Now QL is actually QL Resources is a company that produces eggs and poultry that you eat every day. You go to your economic rise, you want to buy a cook for yourself, you go to any restaurant, these are the company that produce poultry, eggs, and all your food for consumption. So when you are stuck and don't know what to invest in, so you don't choose very sexy sectors like technology or even properties, you choose sectors which is boring but something everyone can relate in. Now Sasbadi is a listed company that does all your revision books, your SPM, STPM, PMR and all that. So these are what we call as a consumer goods, and it's always good to start with, okay, your consumer goods. Now the other last thing that I want to cover today is this sector. Okay, construction. Let's see what okay, construction. Again, if you work in a construction company, then there's always you can actually invest in this sector if you know what's going on. But having said that, if you are not in this sector, then you be expected to do a lot of homework, because construction, it all comes to who gets what job, whether they got a tender for these jobs, whether they got jobs for construction infrastructure, not only in Malaysia but outside of Malaysia, and what is the potential of that, how much this company who are able to secure contract to build a bridge in China, Vietnam or Myanmar, how they're going to profit for that. So this is actually not easy unless you follow this sector very closely. Again, it's a very specialized sector. Don't go into this sector unless you're actually in this construction sector itself. Now, what I want to say that there's this industrial product sector that is perhaps the second option if you want to choose a sector as a total new beginner when it comes to invest in stock. Invest in, this is how you want to invest in this so-called industrial product sector. So industrial product is, if you review over here, you have These Agia and whatnot that made all those rooftops. They meet some companies here they actually make glasses. Some company here they actually make steel. So all those are industrial equipments like piping and all that boring stuff. But these again are basic necessity when it comes to all the human, what humans need for homes, for infrastructure, for their sewer, whatnot, and things like that. So as you can see, there's 10 pages over here. Again, specialized in the thing of industrial service or product that you want to specialize in. Now, things like press metal, aluminum supplier, looks easy, but some of these companies actually export their stuff overseas. So you might also want to specialize in certain certain sector. When this sector, then what kind of industrial product or goods, and it's likely there are few counters under that niche category. So you niche down your category and just keep an eye, follow the news if you want. Even like Supermax, they actually make rubber globes. Even companies like, for example, let me show you here. I should have a company like Top Glove, also rubber glove. These are the top producers of rubbers anywhere in the world. So with that being said, this will be my second sector because these are most resilient. We have covered everything in this sector: how to invest in consumer product stocks, how to invest in industrial product stocks, how to invest in construction stock, trading stocks, technology stocks, how to invest in infrastructure. So we have covered almost everything huge over here. The only thing, there's one sector I have not covered, but this is the sector I would like the most because I'm also the expert in it. You want to know this sector which give you very consistent, very guaranteed dividends year after year, and also very resilient to any economic cycle. If you reach until here, do smash the notification button, hit subscribe, and wait for the next end screen where will be redirected. There's a video for you in the next session you can click where I review the sector that gives you consistent dividends year after year regardless of economic condition. That is the sector that save the best for the last. With that being said, this is CF Liu. Hit the subscribe button, like this video, comment below if you like this, and just watch the next video coming up in the end screen because you are going to love it very, very much. Okay? Ciao.